We're here with Paul Nelson, president of the not-for-profit Erectile Dysfunction Foundation and founder of Frank Talk, an online portal focused on erectile dysfunction. Paul, you hear every day from men all over the country, maybe all over the world, who are having all kinds of needs related to erectile dysfunction. Let's focus for a moment on the so-called last resort, the penile implant, the surgical choice. There's a handful of urologists who are real experts at it, right, experts at doing it, implanting it, and so on. But here's the question. How much do people other than those experts know about penile implants, by which I mean doctors, internists, and patients?
I would say the lack of education or information or knowledge in this area is staggering, even by the medical community. If you talk to your family doctor, they may think, oh, it's a fixed rod that you always have an erection. There's a lot of misinformation about what the thing really is. Of course, men on the street have no idea what a penile implant is because men are never going to talk about that they have one. So even though they very well have a friend who has one, they're never going to know it. So there is basically no information out there readily available to men.
Do you have any sense about why that is? Is it a taboo? Is it a lack of commercial interest, that failure to propagate what is known? And there's a lot known. I mean, there's research done all the time about these things.
Right. I think it is the taboo in America. We're so uncomfortable with what I call authentic discussions about sex and sexuality. Men, even though they may love the fact that they have an implant, they love their implant, they're not going to love it so much that they're going to tell their friends they have one. There's still that sense of embarrassment. Men don't talk about their penis with another guy, and so that is very taboo. Doctors have their hands full dealing with everyday diseases, conditions, and so I don't expect your average primary care doctor to even know anything about an implant, other than he might know it's available. Go find somebody who can help. But I think really it's America's awkwardness with sex.
Seems odd. It doesn't seem obvious that America has a problem talking about sex. There's no lack of sexual content
Right.
across all media, whether it's
Right.
television, cable television,
Right.
internet. What did you mean when you said authentic information?
Well, men generally don't have honest discussions about their sexuality. What men learn about sex is generally from friends when they were teenagers, and then what they see on pornography. And as I tell all the patients I work with, porn is 100% lie. Nobody has a body like that. Nobody has sex like that. And yet every guy in the back of his brain thinks, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's my goal, is to be, check the box of what I should be doing during sex. Therefore, I must be good. And honest man-to-man discussions about sex, we are years away from that happening, where men can have honest discussions about who they are sexually, what they do sexually. They're uncomfortable with it. Men think it's so private, I can only just do this with my partner. Many men even have a hard time discussing sex with their wives.
So you work as a clinical sex educator.
Right.
Can you give us an example of maybe a conversation you've had with one of your customers that takes him from this inauthentic world that he's come from, and perhaps all that he knows, pornography is an example, to a world, to an example of where you talk to him about what you would consider an example of authentic conversation about sex? I mean, what is that like? Give us an example.
Sure. Well, the first time I sit down with a patient, we take a very detailed sexual history. And the topics start off with, what do you do for a living? How old are you? How many kids? All that kind of stuff. And as we go through, it's like, tell me about your partner. Tell me about your wife. What is she like? How often are you having sex? Is she enjoying sex? Tell me about, are you masturbating? And some of the guys, when you get to that, you can see they're beginning to shift. But once they loosen up and they discover they can talk about it, that here are the troubles I have, or I have a hard time reaching climax under these conditions, or no, my wife isn't crazy about sex, I don't know why. I can then help figure out, okay, what's going on so that your wife doesn't like sex? Why is it not fulfilling for her? Is it because you're imitating porn so much, it's solely focused on intercourse, or it's solely focused on reaching climax. So then we dissect that, and it's like, okay, what is a sexual experience, and what can it look like that would be more fulfilling for both people, less fraught with anxiety and expectation, not living up to some imaginary standard for sex or sexual activity. And then once you teach men how to do things in a freer, more relaxed way, their sex lives simply improve.
So if this is the reality, what you're describing, that men can't even discuss masturbation, just to pick an example, comfortably, then that would seem to be intuitively a very large part of the explanation for why there's a general lack of awareness about something like a penile implant, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if the audience, whether it's some urologists, whether it's internists, whether it's diabetes educators, whether it's just the man on the street, so to speak, are not comfortable talking about erections, masturbation, as you said, having authentic conversations about what real sex is, not what pornography is,
Right.
then how are you ever going to get to a conversation about surgery, which is what a prosthesis is? I mean, I think part of the issue, and I'm just speculating, I'd be interested in your feedback. I mean, I think part of the issue about the lack of awareness about prostheses is that when they were invented, which goes back 40 years at this point, the initial models and the patient selection were nowhere near as refined as what you've got today, right? Which means that the early experience was associated with complications on a much more frequent basis than what we're seeing today. For example, the likelihood of an infection for an inflatable penile implant today, obviously depending on who you're talking about as the surgeon and which patient population you're dealing with, but let's say a very experienced surgeon, let's say a post-prostatectomy patient who's essentially healthy. Right. I mean, the likelihood of an infection is less than 1%.
Right.
But so if you've got not only the taboos that you're talking about, plus these preconceived notions built up over the last 40 years, acting together, there's not going to be an openness to talking about implants, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then add just the simple fact that some guy is thinking, somebody's going to cut open my penis? That to most men is terrifying. I teach men how to inject into their penis. That's a big enough hurdle right there.
Yep.
To say some doctors, they imagine it's going to be slit, wide open. That's the biggest terror.
Have you ever seen one of those operations? Have you ever gone into the OR to watch one?
No, I have not. I've certainly seen the videos.
Yep.
But I tell guys, it's sort of like, think of it as plastic surgery. You love the results. I'm not sure I want to see somebody's face get cut up.
Of course, yeah.
So I would say, guys, if you really want to watch the actual surgery, that's great, but leave that to the doctors for the most part.
No, there's no need for it. No, I was just curious. But do you know? Is it clear to you and your audience, for example, that again, depending on who the surgeon is, you're dealing with a procedure that's outpatient, less than an hour, with, like I said, very, very rare complications that I think you said it to me earlier. You're hearing from men who actually are very, very happy once they have it.
Oh, absolutely. Something like 96 or 97% of men are thrilled they have an implant. Their number one complaint is they waited too long.
Really?
That's almost every guy wishes he hadn't waited so long. These guys, some of them, wait 6 or 7 years dealing with pills that are not working, inflation, things, injections, and they wish some surgeon had come to them and said right away, you've done it for 1 year, you haven't, it's not going to work, let's get you satisfied right away.
Right.
So that's their biggest result. That's the biggest.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I mean, you're in tune with very large communities of men from all walks. I mean, real men with authentic needs.
Right.
That are not being fulfilled very well. Thanks for sharing your perspectives on them, penile implants, and the work ahead for all of us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.